what's up everyone? Welcome to Getting Real with Ryley, where we get real vulnerable and we debunk all things beauty standards. In today's episode, I thought it would be fun, well, kind of fun and scary, to get super personal today and talk about my body acceptance journey and kind of follow up with where I'm at today. Before we get into the video, please make sure to hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy it, and without further ado, let's get right into it. Before we start, I do want to say I'm sorry if you can hear my dog panting. It's very hot here today in Nashville, Tennessee. He pants a lot, you know, I just took him out, threw the ball a little bit because I knew he'd be sitting here for a while. If you hear some dog panting, that's why. He's trying his best. So when it all started for me, I first want to say that insecurities start differently for everybody and everybody has their own journey. Mine's, I would say, started around 3rd grade. I know, very young, but let me explain. This was a time when my parents were getting a divorce and I was dealing with custody battle stuff and, oh, there he goes. Hopefully he'll go to another room. There he goes again. And we ended up moving cities, which was really scary and shocking. At such a young age, I had to say goodbye to pretty much all of my friends and everything I grew up knowing. So already I felt like I was in an extremely vulnerable place in my life and made me feel very, very insecure and confused and angry at times, if I am being quite honest. It really took a toll on my development as a child. I remember really struggling to feel accepted and loved, and I never felt like I fit in growing up throughout grade school. School was a very, very difficult time for me. I had a really hard time focusing. I definitely dabbled into hanging out with the wrong kind of people. I myself dabbled into partying a little bit too much at like a young age and just doing a bunch of stuff that, looking back now, really was a way of me acting out on how much I was hurting as a young kid. School is already such an awkward time, and I think for everybody it's completely normal to feel very insecure and we're trying to like find ourselves. We might go through ups and downs of loving ourselves and feeling accepted. That's totally normal. I get it. But mine, I feel like, was very, very heightened and was the beginning of a lot of negative, detrimental thinking habits that I had on myself, and my self-esteem was just at an all-time low, and I kind of grew close to having these really, really just sad, horrible feelings about myself at a very young age. I remember growing up around women in my family, friends, so on, of constantly hearing themselves talk poorly about their bodies, feeling ashamed of how they were aging or that they gained weight or just feeling gross. And it was a really normal thing to constantly read like news articles and magazine covers and TV shows of people just tearing apart women's bodies. Like, I remember walking down the grocery aisle when I was going grocery shopping with my parents at a young age and seeing the magazine covers of all the celebrities who have let themselves go, or they gained weight, or can you believe how ugly they look, or just zooming in on these very unflattering angles of women and just ripping them apart for everybody in the world to see. And that was just normal in that day and age. And my family and the women around me enjoyed watching those. They would buy those magazines. And at the time, I'm so young and I don't see the difference or why this is so toxic for women. I just thought that that's what life was, and we should grow up hating ourselves. Like, why does anybody deserve to love their bodies? So I think with just these little details that trickled in throughout my younger life, it developed into this low confident, low self-esteem young girl. Being young and very impressionable and going through such a difficult time in my life, I really accumulated some negative self-talk, and being around that toxic conversation, naturally I absorbed that information and I carried it on with me. When it was at its worst, I remember I moved to LA in my younger 20s and I pursued my modeling career. I was a person who really strived to be perfect all the time, and I thought that that was the way that was going to make me feel loved and celebrated and the road to my success and happiness. I remember watching countless YouTube videos of Victoria's Secret models, and I wanted to live their kind of lifestyle. I wanted to be the super healthy, super fit, super productive, super glamorous model, because to me at that moment, that's what was going to make me feel successful. Turns out though, I did not love myself. No matter how much I worked out, no matter how much I lost weight, no matter how healthy I ate and how much I took the best photos and wore the best clothes and worked with the best photographers, at the end of the day, none of that mattered because I was suffering inside still. I focused so much on eating a low carb diet. I remember I would be so hungry all the time and I would get crazy mood swings of being super hangry because I don't want to say that I completely depleted myself, but I was not eating enough calories for sure. I definitely thought that the only way for me to stay really lean and skinny was by cutting out carbs, and although it did work, it was not sustainable because I didn't have enough energy levels. My body now, I run off carbs and I love carbohydrates. So I don't know how I did that. I would eat a really strict vegan diet, which I still eat plant-based today. Like, there's no shame on the diet itself. I just think the way that I was approaching it might have not been the healthiest way, and I definitely was not eating as intuitively as I do now. So I'm not bashing the diet. There is a way to do it healthfully, but how I was doing it back then was not the healthiest. I also would work out 2 hours or 3 hours a day, and although that in and of itself is not unhealthy, but I put so much pressure on myself that I would not let myself leave the house or go hang out with friends or do anything unless I worked out, because I felt so insecure about my body and I felt so overweight, and I felt like everybody was going to be just staring at my stomach or the weight that I gained, and I would stop wearing certain belly shirts. Like, I didn't want to show my stomach. I didn't want anything that was too tight around my waist. I just was so ashamed of my body. And I remember really wanting to go out with friends and really living a normal social life, but I was so crippled by the way I viewed myself that I would literally cancel plans just because I felt so ugly that day. The modeling industry is, as we know, a very difficult industry, especially for women who don't have any connections in the industry at all. It can almost feel completely impossible to actually become successful in it. It takes a lot of hard work and dedication, and to be honest, it's not for everybody, and it definitely was not for me. I did my best. I tried my hardest. I did have some minor little successions, but overall it was more detrimental to my mental health than it was beneficial to my overall career and lifestyle. I remember I was doing test shoots about 3 to 4 times a week. If you don't know what a test shoot is, it's basically when a model and a photographer meet up and they do a full-on photo shoot together, and they just do trade-offs for each other's portfolio. So there's no payment involved. It's basically just to grow each other's experience and portfolios. So I was doing that 3 to 4 times a week. There would be times where I would love the photos that I would get back and I would feel on cloud 9. I was all confident. I was like, let's do this. Like, I got this. Like, I just felt so happy with myself. But then I would get my other set of photos from a different shoot, and boy, would that ruin my week. If I did not like those photos, I would just tear apart myself so hardcore to where I was just in this like negative loophole in my mind over and over and over and over again for weeks on end. Some of those photos that I would get back, I would think that I was just huge, so fat. I hated the angles that they captured me at. I hated the way my face looked. I thought I was literally just the most ugly creature that I've ever seen in the world. And looking at those photos, it would literally bring me to tears, and I would just cry to myself. And the thought of looking at them again would literally make me feel crippled inside. My boyfriend at the time, who is still my boyfriend today, was so incredibly supportive and sweet throughout this entire period of my time. As difficult as this was to hear in the moment, he was the one who actually was saying, like, I see the way this industry and this job affects you, like, and it's affecting you pretty negatively, like, maybe you should consider stepping back for a while and healing yourself and working on loving yourself more, because clearly this is really detrimental to your mental health. And at the time, I didn't want to hear that because I was in such denial and I wanted to be successful in this industry so bad that I wasn't going to let anything get in the way of it. But slowly, his voice kept popping into my head, and I did take the initiative to step back. Looking back now at those older photos that I once hated really makes me sad, because I love them. I'm so proud of them. And if only I could have loved myself a little more in that moment, maybe I could have been proud of them too. And I could have stopped my mind from getting in the way of so many things that I could have achieved. But everything happens for a reason, and I'm so grateful that I experienced all of that. As painful and uncomfortable as it was, I wouldn't be the person I am today, and I wouldn't be here with you guys. So there's that. When the pandemic hit in 2020, I completely stopped modeling. All of the gyms were closed down, and I was living in LA, and the only way to work out was in your home or to walk on the sidewalk. And that was really difficult for me to maintain, because on top of that, it was just a really stressful time. It was really scary, and the world pretty much stopped and flipped upside down, as we all know. I'm sure everybody experienced that feeling to some degree. I remember in the beginning of the pandemic, I felt so stressed out because I was scared that I was gonna gain weight, and guess what? I did gain weight. And that was probably the best thing that could have ever happened to me in my life. Sounds wild, right? The one thing that I was so afraid of for so long actually healed me, because I finally learned to let go. I was put in an even more vulnerable place with myself. I was forced to heal myself, and I was forced to learn to love my body through every cycle of life. But don't get me wrong, this was not an easy thing to do. I spent countless days crying, staring at myself in the mirror. I even stopped weighing myself, which I still don't to this day, just because it is so much healthier for my mental health. But in that moment, I stopped weighing myself because I was weighing myself so much, and I just saw the numbers keep going up and up and up, and it crushed me. It was fucking hard to say the least. But I got to a point where I was like, why does it matter? Literally, why does it matter? I'm still healthy. I still have my loved ones. Like, it could be so much worse. Why am I dwelling so much on such a minute thing in my life? It wasn't until then that I learned to replace the negative words with positive ones. I grew so strong in my mind that I was able to remind myself when I was feeling extra insecure of all the amazing qualities about myself that had nothing to do with my weight. Now, in current day, I work out consistently still. I eat a healthy, balanced diet. I love health. I love focusing my life on taking care of my body. But now I do it for all the right reasons. And that is to feel strong, to feel present, to feel empowered, and to feel in alignment with my highest power. I know social media has such a negative stigma, but personally, social media is what helped me heal in so many ways. Finding some amazing women online that are bold enough to be vulnerable and share their insecurities online really helped me heal, because knowing what a normal body looks like, something that is not normally presented on regular media, really put a lot of things into perspective. All of the things that I would hate about myself, even when I was so hyper-focused on making my body perfect, I still was human at the end of the day. I still had body hair. I still had skin rolls and fat rolls and jiggly arms and jiggly legs and relaxed tummies when I sat down. It's like that never went away. And those were always the things that I hated about myself, but I could never change that. That's just literally being a human. And to be reminded by that on social media by some of these amazing influencers, I can't even begin to describe how beneficial that was to me loving myself more. Thank you so much to all those brave women out there who do choose to share their journey online. I love you. And honestly, I wouldn't be sharing my journey if it wasn't for you. I strongly believe that being vulnerable and sharing your own personal struggles is how we are going to heal as a society, because if we keep maintaining this perfect, closed off persona, we're just creating unrealistic standards for everything. Not even just body image, but just how we live our lives. And I say be vulnerable, put yourself out there, and don't be afraid to share your heart. And for all of my future mothers and current mothers out there, remind yourself that the way you talk about yourself and think about yourself is the way your daughter is going to think about herself. Be a good example for our next generations. Be the role models that you always wish you wanted. Thank you all for joining me on today's episode, and I am so grateful to be here. And if you are still here at the end of the video, thank you again. I know this was kind of a long one. And like I always say, please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it, leave a comment, and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn your notifications on so you don't miss another one of my videos. And I will see you guys very, very soon. Bye.